Hi everyone, welcome to the April episode of Psych Soc O'clock. For the interview this month, rather than doing what we normally do and interviewing a researcher in the studio, I'm going to be going to The Stand, which is one of Glasgow's very top comedy venues, and talking to the comedians and the managers there about all things to do with psychology and comedy. I promise not to make too many jokes, but I'll ask as many questions as I can. Okay, so I've just arrived at The Stand, and do you mind introducing yourself and what you do?
I'm Scott. I work at The Stand. I do a variety of jobs, including managing, occasionally sound teching, and on the bar.
I guess you're there and present for a lot of the acts and also jumping in and out behind the scenes. So is there anything that you've noticed comedians do well to kind of amp up a crowd, or what gets a crowd excited for the act to come on?
I think just the competer's job is to kind of get the room to the right level.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that is like amping up the crowd, getting them, really excited and really buzzed. But other times it's about getting them, in the right zone for whatever kind of night it's going to be. Because sometimes some acts aren't as maybe high energy. Mm. So if you get the crowd really pumped, and then a kind of low energy act comes out, there's a wee bit of a kind of a difference there that can kind of set off to a bad start.
Yeah.
So a good competer should know exactly what kind of act's coming and how to get the crowd to that level. But most of the time the simple thing is get them excited.
Yeah.
Like for example Red Raw, it's an easy thing to do. You get 200, usually kind of younger folk in, and they all roughly know what the night's going to be like anyway, so there's always that anticipation on their part, so you all really need to do is stoke it a wee bit and it erupts. Getting the crowd excited, often just you start off with a bit of interaction where people are from, get them a wee bit loose, a wee bit giddy, and then just get them to start kind of doing a pause, maybe a wee game, probably to start off quietly, building the pause up, until you've got the kind of, that can help. Or, just, ladies and gentlemen, here's the next act, The crowd are right, you don't need to do much.
Yeah. Do you notice, is there like an order that works well in terms of having really high energy? Would you then slowly make the way down, or does it sometimes work?
We talk about it like an album sometimes, that I think the ordering is very important. Mm-hmm. If you start off, you want to start off with quite a good punch, get everyone in the room aware of what's happening, it's comedy, it's okay to laugh, get them giddy, I think once somebody's in a kind of humorous mood, it's quite easy to stay there, and then it lingers throughout the whole night. It doesn't always work out that way, because we, on a regular night, we'd have 5 acts including the compere, so only 4 acts that are actually, you'd call album tracks, and the 10 spot is always the 10 spot, so the first spot is 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. There's someone who have either kind of been in the game for a while, and are just solid, they know what they're doing, or maybe someone that's a wee bit newer, but they're starting to kind of emerge and they're kind of, doing well recently. So the 15-minute spot tends to be quite a kind of somebody we can trust anyway. They can get the night off to a good start. Then the 10 spot is often a kind of newer act, which means that it's hard to kind of really dictate what kind of act they're going to be. But often the presumption is that the 15 minutes should be better than the 10-minute. Right. So you should start off with a powerful one, then something maybe a wee bit different or a wee bit kind of softer. But just rolling into that next act. And then you've got the main support after that, which is a 20-minute act, who tend to be somebody that's fairly established, knows what they're doing, they're just a good support. Or again, one of the 15 minutes that's been doing well recently that's been promoted up to the 20.
Okay.
But ideally, a good night should operate in which the 15-minute is a really good starting act and gets everybody going. 10 minutes maybe something more interesting, and it can be a wee bit, usually sometimes for a 10 spot to get noticed, sometimes they need to be a wee bit different.
There's been quite a big trend in more vulnerability in comedians' performances, like with Nanette, with Janey Godley, where she talked quite openly about her mental health problems and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I've noticed, I quite like stand-up comedy, and I've noticed people seem to be talking a bit more maybe openly, or they have sections where it's sadder, but then they move on to comedic explorations of that. Have you noticed that?
Well, yeah, I would say you feel that way, but I don't know, thinking back, I'm sure there's always been that strain through comedy, it's always been a, for a lot of people, they do, many acts will tell you on stage this is cheaper than therapy.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they'll say, yeah, I'm only here because I can't afford a psychologist, psychiatrist. And I think vulnerability helps because I think it helps with empathy. I think a lot of the time comedy works through empathy. If you like someone or if you can feel what they're talking about, it can, you know, like, make a deeper connection with the person. And if someone is talking about, you know, things such as that, everybody has them, so I think it makes it easier to connect. And also, it might be profitable, it might be a good way of going forward, it might be part of the trend is, you know, if people are getting picked up that are more, not just less about, I'm just making you laugh, but trying to do more than that, you know, making you laugh, but also raise issues that, like, you know, I've noticed a few kind of Me Too kind of sets or shows coming out of that, a few that I thought have been really good, especially as a man. You know, people aren't always a fan of like bravado and confidence and saying, oh yeah, I'm the best, I'm this and that. People come out and say, I'm human, I'm frail, you know, I'm not as manly as, you know, society expects me to be, and I'm okay with that, and I think that's good for a lot of folk. And the audience can maybe go, well, you know what, we don't always need to pretend that these things don't exist as well. Your mental health, it does exist.
Yeah.
So if I do feel, I feel less likely to try and hide it, and maybe talk about it more openly, and I think that's one thing that comedy is good for. We just talk about the kind of the freedom of speech aspect of it. You know, I like the idea that this basement that I work in, you know, like, it should be a space to explore a lot of different ideas and be able to talk about anything and, you know, not face too many repercussions. It's interesting, you know, at least he presents it in a funny way, and I think sometimes with comedy, as long as it's funny first, and then after that you can start to kind of break it apart, question it, say, you know, is it valid, you know, should it be more aware of itself.
Yeah. How do, when they say something controversial, do you think that there's any ways or any good ways you've seen that comedians try and get back their audiences if something they've said causes a lot of tension?
Yeah, it really does it. I've seen a lot of acts drop something. The problem is sometimes it's all about context. Somebody will begin a piece which will appear one way, but in the full piece you see how it kind of takes a swerve at the end or comes back round. But sometimes audience members will jump in before the full context is revealed, and that can cause a wee bit of problems. And then you've got the comedian that's there to then go, well, if you were just to sit and listen to the full thing, you might be able to put it into more in context. But comedians getting it back, usually you get it back by trying to explain your position overall, or explain, like, what I'm doing here, I'm trying to make things interesting. But I think the misogyny part is something that I think a lot of stand-ups still maybe haven't kind of, like, few acts are actually racist. You know, I don't think that's even, you know, I think it's so, I don't know if it can even exist now, you know, without just seeming like an idiot.
Yeah.
And then maybe say something that sounds a bit racist, you see maybe in a larger context that they're having a go at themselves. Because sometimes, you know, you can seem on the surface, but most of these guys have maybe got deeper messages to what they're saying. But the misogyny thing's still an interesting one because I still feel a lot more comedy. You know, especially as a guy now, after Me Too, I do feel we got more of, should be more vigilant to stuff like that. And when I hear some like male stand-ups, you know, like, usually it comes through Red Raw, folk that are still a wee bit kind of untested and they're writing their first kind of set, they've maybe not written that many jokes, that material. Maybe that's the stuff that gets a laugh amongst our friends, so that's what they kind of bring to the stage. And often that's the thing, you know, that's when you kind of run against that.
I guess as a final thing, I should have asked you this at the beginning, but do you have a particular type of humour that's your favourite? Do you like sketch acts or observational comedy?
I've got to say, after working here for a while, it's more the kind of surreal stuff I tend to kind of gravitate to. But it's just off enough, but at the same time I really respect well-written, well-constructed material, you know, it's like stuff where you've like somebody's really thought about that, really constructed it well, made it all work, again, like similar to the album, you know, like, interesting beginning, you know, takes you on a journey, you know. Deep down I think I'd rather see a really well put together, you know, someone's really worked on bit of material. And then after that, go and see Tony Law. Just somebody silly that just, I don't know why I'm laughing, but I'm just laughing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Cheers, thank you.
So, do you mind introducing yourself?
Okay, my name is Bruce Morton. I'm a stand-up comic, if someone now at the edges of the perimeter of it. And as well as having been working as a stand-up comic and a writer for about 29 years, I've got a part-time job also where I work at the Stand Comedy Club in Glasgow 2 nights a week, help out with sound and lights and things like that. I watch a whole bunch more stand-up.
Oh, amazing.
Mm-hmm.
What would you describe your style of comedy writing and performing as, if you could, in a sentence?
Observational, anecdotal, happy for others to say, I think. It's not too, I don't think it's particularly aggressive comedy, nor do I talk much about things which are in popular culture, because I don't want the television, and I'm too old for pop music, and I don't know who the pop stars are, so there's a lot of things in popular culture which I don't know about, and so that really becomes part of anything I do behind a microphone.
Do you ever write jokes or observational comedy about the people that you see performing here?
No, those such comments would be strictly off the record.
Is there a comedian's rule not to talk about other
things? No, absolutely not. Last week we had a situation in here where they have a show called Red Raw, which is ostensibly for newer people, to give them a chance. And then, by and large, people do quite well, but occasionally you do see what we would call car crash. And there was one that night, and the comic who went up next following the car crash simply took the mic and said, well, how do you follow that? So you made reference to it.
Yeah.
You make reference to it, you don't pretend it didn't happen. Everyone in the room saw and witnessed that it didn't happen. And if you're not going to try to pretend it didn't, then there's a lot of dishonesty going on there. Probably a lot of fear. So he wasn't the only one who referenced that person.
Yeah. Have you had to, I guess, if you've been doing comedy for 29 years, you've had to follow a few either really, really fantastic acts or really, really bad ones?
Yeah, I guess so. And it's moot as to whether one would prefer to follow a fantastic comic or a bad one. Because the bad one, if he or she has just stunk the room out, and you've got to pick it up. But then if you're on a bill with some comics and you've got a decent compere, that compere will be able to resurrect the flat moment that just happened, and resurrect it, pick it up a little bit, start to put a lot more tone and atmosphere back in the room, get the waves running again so that you can come out hopefully and surf on that. If you follow someone who is absolutely fantastic and knocks it out of the park, it's a different set of priorities. First of all, it's good because they already kicked up the energy, and if you're halfway decent as a comic, you should be able to ride those waves, and then you want to try to see if you can do even better than that.
Is there quite a competitive nature, do you think?
I don't think so. I think it's much more, in my experience, it's much more competitive in the world of acting. They can be quite ferocious and quite candid, quite scathing about other people in their profession. Whereas here, in the stand-up community, I've always felt, down through the years, it's a very supportive community. Round every corner you're going to meet an asshole. Right? But by and large, people are really helpful, and if someone's putting a gig on somewhere, phone some person, phone him for her, say, do you want to come along, do you want to do it, and those sort of favours, not favours, but those job offers will get reciprocated. And there's been situations I know of, lately a comic that we know of, an older fella, he got ill, he has Crohn's disease. Yeah. Wow. And so this has really hampered his ability to go out and do gigs. And well, a couple of things happened. One, some of the comics set up a kind of fundraiser thing to get him out a lot of extra cash. And then he was due to play on a bill at a gig out in Perthshire where he couldn't make it because of his illness. So the rest of it, someone replaced him. And on the way back from there to Glasgow, we stopped over at his house and just dumped like a percentage of our fee through his letterbox for him. So things like that are not uncommon.
Does it depend on the night and the place where you are in how supportive the audience are to you? So if you've got maybe regulars that know that you're going to perform, do you find that it's a lot easier to perform to them because they're sort of more willing to...
Well, you're talking about whether people are familiar with stand-up and the audience.
Yeah.
You get some people, there are people that I would describe as connoisseurs. Like they would be regulars in this club where we're sitting right now, and they would come down once or twice a month, and they know they're very up to speed on stand-up and what it's about. then you get people who, it's like they're comedy virgins, they don't know what the hell's going on, right? And they're terrified that if they sit at the front something extraordinarily bad will happen, and it never does. So I think that's quite amusing. Over the last 10, 15 years now, stand-up's become a really visible part of the entertainment landscape. Prior to then, initially and for a long time, it was very niche stand-up comedy. People, you ever been to a stand-up comedy gig? Well, yeah, I went. Was it good? Oh, I enjoyed it. Have you been bad? No. Well, why not? Since got these big glossy shows like Michael McIntyre, Live at the Apollo, these things there, and the sets that the comics do will be very, very honed. They'll also be edited. The cutaways to the audience will show the audience having a great old laugh. Everything's fantastic. So stand-up becomes more, as I said, visible. More and more people know about it and see it as a valid thing to maybe go and see. But if their only experience of stand-up has been watching it on one of these high-gloss, high-production television shows, and then they come here, where it's for real, and a comic is actually interacting with you, and sometimes some of the jokes will fall flat. If a joke falls flat when they're recording one of those shows, it gets cut out, there's not to use it. Quite a way. Why not? You want to make the best show. So I think it's quite a paradox that the more popular it's become, the trickier it can get in the clubs.
Yeah, because people expect it to be absolutely perfect. And
Yeah. And there's lots of things in which you factor in for whether or not a gig is going to be a good gig. Most comics, particularly comics that have been in it for a long time, can come into a venue, let's say it was this one, and there's 120 people sitting there, and show times at about 8:30. You can feel, this will sound crazy, you can almost taste an atmosphere, and you can know this is going to be a good one.
Right.
This is going to be alright.
And I guess you notice, especially because you do some tech as well, do you try and choose music which...
Oh, well, on that point, yeah. The tunes, the playlist that I put on the sound system in here are, it's not top 40, and it's not heavy rock, and it's not techno, it's more, it's lots of kind of some soul and a little cool jazz, and there's nothing above about 110 beats per minute. And my colleagues here would agree with me, and we've spoken about this, that I think that does help the mood. Because music is about mood as well as other things.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I think, here's another thing you may know, may be interested in. So music, you've got a nice playlist there, get everyone chilled, don't have people's hearts racing. When they recorded the show in the States, Late Night with Letterman, in the TV studio, they had the studio at optimum temperature. I think it was 23 degrees, something like that, but they had worked out, they looked into what is the most comfortable temperature to watch comedy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so specific.
Yeah, but and there's lots of things that can make it go wrong. You come into maybe someone set up a gig and the tables are miles away from the stage. There's a great sort of wooden moat of floor space. So you can't get the connection, the intimacy, this is all about communication.
Yeah.
That's what it's about, communicating ideas, communicating with people, and in the very end, hopefully doing something which, not to be too profound, when a comic has been very self-deprecating or points out something that you knew but you hadn't thought about, one of the profound things is that the act, the exchange here reminds you as a audience member, oh, thank Christ I'm not alone.
Do you find that you create and write comedy which is very similar to the things you find funny when you watch stand-up, or do you find that you kind of write more for what you think your audience will really enjoy?
It's not the latter, although I clearly want to have a self-belief that what you've generated, what you've written is good enough that people will like it. Certainly don't want to come out and just alienate them. But as to whether or not I would sit and specifically write something which could be described as crowd pleasing. No, not quite, because as I said before, I couldn't tell you Ed Sheeran from a cement mixer. I've got no interest in the differences between dogs and cats or men and women, not really.
Yeah.
And your first point was, do I watch other comics? Well, I watch other comics, but it's not like I'll see some comic and think, well, that's a really great bit about snowboarding. I think I'll go home and write something about snowboarding. I'm more interested in watching what would you call technique, stagecraft, and seeing how people work a room. You know, some common mistakes. I mean, you're in psychology, you know very well about the power of eye contact, and it's one of the tools that you have in stand-up. You want to, as I say, work the room, so you'll be looking to your left, play a couple of jokes over there, over to the right, make sure they're involved. If it's a big room, maybe keep your chin up, because if you keep your head down, you've excluded all those people further and forwards back, and occasionally you get a punchline out and you just drill it out right down someone's throat, right in their eye, and it's very powerful. So that's a technique.
And do you find as well that when people are on stage, they have a completely different attitude and persona to sometimes when you've met them afterwards, or is it quite common for people to be very themselves?
It varies from comic to comic, but those, even those who step up and present a very naturalistic demeanour, when that happens, it's interesting, because what you're doing is you're being natural in a very unnatural environment. Yeah. You know, it's not really normal to get behind a microphone and try to entertain a whole room full of strangers. That's not normal at all. Yeah. And you can see why many people are terrified of it. So, but those people, I mean, I think of guys like, say, Raymond Mearns, or even Janey that's going to be on tonight, they have a real kind of down-to-earth, naturalistic style, but that's deceptive, because someone can watch that, and I've heard this a million times, and every comic has, and someone will say, oh, my mate's really funny, you should hear him down the pub, he's put a laugh, he could do that. Well, could he? Because while it looks natural, it's actually an exaggeration of your persona. Maybe only subtle exaggeration, but it's a heightened one, because you've got lights in your face, you're amplified, and you have a job to do. You ain't just chatting to your mates down the pub, you've got responsibility. So it's a different vibe.
And I guess you have to try and make sure that what you're doing is relatable, not just to people that know you and know the people you're talking about, but to everyone. Yeah. I think sometimes there's a lot of, it's a personal little bugbear of mine, I think that a lot of comics, there's a lot of too much exposition, you know, Extinction Rebellion, alright. So you may hear a comic talk about Extinction Rebellion and say, oh, and if you don't know what Extinction Rebellion is, let me tell you, it's this movement, blah, blah, blah. And, well, that's not a very good example, it is an example for where I feel you're patronising the audience here. It's alright, we're reasonably intelligent, but don't. Well, you want to make it relatable. It goes back to what I said before, you know, to get this sense of unity, of commonality, of we're all idiots, we're all in the same damn stupid boat. What's the best way to pilot this thing? But there's plenty of sound.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Stand Comedy Club here in Glasgow. Let's welcome our host for tonight's show, the absolutely fantastic Janey Godley.
Give that man a whistle. Job well done. So, we're going on with the show. We've got first comedian, then we're going to have a break. Guys, oh, that was such a loud noise.
It was amazing to watch the way that Janey dealt with the crowd when people made comments, or she noticed something funny was happening, she picked up on it, and people were laughing for absolutely ages, which was great to warm up everyone for the acts that were about to come on.
What's that anything exciting happening here? You're over there. That's a shame. I'm joking, they're lovely. I'm glad you're all having.
After Janey had got the crowd laughing, it was time for the first comedian of the night, Steve Buchanan, to come on.
My name's Stephen. Nice to be back gigging in Glasgow. I was out in Australia there. Glasgow gets quite a violent reputation, but it's trying to change its ways. I read recently that Glasgow is currently the UK's stab capital, but also Great Britain's most vegan-friendly city. Basically, we'll stab you, but we draw the line at drinking milk. Because we're not barbarians. You need to know how to protect yourself, so I've devised a survival tip that I'll share with you all. If you're out walking home late at night, what you should do is put your hand into your pocket, put your keys between your knuckles, It's a technique that I read in Hello magazine to fight off predators. That way, if someone tries to attack you, you are ready to just give them your car. Take my Clio, mate, don't hurt me, thank you. I have lost 3 cars. Never been stabbed.
I managed to catch Stephen and Marc, another comedian you'll hear a bit later on, just before Stephen went on stage. So we went into an office, and here is some of the things they had to say about comedy. So we're in the office, in the stand, and do you guys mind introducing yourselves?
My name is Stephen Buchanan. I am a comedian, and I'm performing tonight at the stand. Mm-hmm. Do you want me to tell you my style of comedy now?
Yeah, that would be great. It's like you read my mind.
My style of comedy is probably observational, quite self-deprecating humour, maybe a bit of storytelling as well.
And my name's Marc Jennings. I am also a stand-up comedian. I'll be performing at the stand in Glasgow tonight as well. My style of comedy is, again, like Stephen, sort of observational comedy. I'm quite interested in like current affairs. Like I like talking about politics. I like talking about relationships and dating and that side of things as well, and just general stuff about my life. But yeah, very conversational, observational stuff, I would say, is my style.
Oh, cool. Do you guys find that you take a lot of things which happen in your own lives then if you do observational comedy, or do you tend to take stories from your friends and mush them together?
I would say definitely my own life is probably where most of my material comes from. Occasionally if your friend says something daft, then you'd incorporate it in, but it's usually your own experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, stand-up's a very narcissistic medium in a lot of ways, because like
it's a good psychology word.
It is though, because like even for me, like I quite like talking about, as I say, like I ideally like to talk about politics or whatever. But even if you're doing that, you sort of like the best comics always sort of relate it back to themselves and how it relates to them. So it's like, you know, you can talk about whatever, you know, Brexit or Donald Trump or whatever, but actually it's your perspective on it, why it affects you, why you care about it a lot of the time, and like that sort of filters through everything. So I'm actually I probably talk a lot more about myself and all that than I would necessarily have thought I would have done or even like to, but a big part of it as well is just like the audience realising who you are and sort of getting across to them where you're coming from and who you are and what your life is like, basically.
Yeah. Did you find it quite nerve-wracking the first time, not just the first time, but sharing those kind of aspects of your own life with an audience?
I've never got nervous. I don't really get nervous. Now, the only thing I was worried about in my first gig was just remembering the stuff, but although to be fair, my first 5 minutes I'd done 5 minutes about Michael Barrymore for some reason. It wasn't the mid-90s, so it wasn't topical or anything, but no, but I suppose I in the last year or so I've tried to be a lot more authentic and a bit more revealing about certain things that I wouldn't necessarily want to talk about. So that's been a big change for me, and it's not always comfortable.
Yeah.
And I've not even let my family come and see me in the last year or so because I'm kind of embarrassed. Like even just talking about stuff to do with like sex or whatever, like or just being a bit more personal. Like sometimes you're like, it's actually easier to say it in front of an audience than it is to say it to people, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I find that as well. I probably get nervous. Well, yeah, I would say I get nerves before gigs and stuff. But
that's why he's having that pint right now.
But usually it's, I don't think my nerves would be affected more because I'm talking about personal things. I think just in general being on stage in front of people is probably where the nerves come from. But
do you do anything in particular to try and, do you have like a ritual that you do to try and manage your nerves, or just force yourself to jump off on stage? And
yeah, but like it's not like uncontrollable. Like at the start it was pretty like bad. I would have to have like 5 or 6 pints to go on stage, or like
that's when your funniness to be
But then you'd also have like little rituals, or like little like I need to wash my hands a certain amount of times or something, like maybe not that specifically. I'm trying to think of one that I had. Like I've always had, like if I had a good gig in a certain pair of socks, I would always try and wear those socks like from then on. If I had a bad gig, I'd never wear them again.
Until you die in your arse and you're
like these socks are broke.
Need new material.
what inspired you to start doing stand-up?
The old cliche of I always wanted to make people laugh in school and the school village.
No, well, for me, I actually used to come here a lot. Like, well, I think the weird thing, the sort of elephant in the room for both of us, in a way, we're both from Clydebank, where Ken Bridges grew up as well. So that was a sort of, like, before I'd even, I was sort of, he was doing that when we were both still at school, so he was a sort of omnipresent thing in terms of that in a way. But for me, I remember going to see him and thinking, like, it was so amazing, but I never thought I could really do what he does because he's just so funny and all that. But then I started coming here, coming to the stand and going to a lot of the new act nights and stuff, and you see people who are pretty shit and you kind of go, fuck, I could do that, like, you know, I could be as bad as that at least. So at the time when I was at uni, like, me and my mates wanted to write a sitcom, so I said to them all, like, you know, if we do 5 minutes, we try out 5 minutes of stand-up, but it's a good way of seeing if we can write a funny script. But really, I just wanted to try it anyway, so I done it, and none of them did, and I really enjoyed it, and then I eventually done some more, and then here we are. Yeah.
Do you find that you enjoy writing and performing, or is there one that you like more?
Both. I think the process of doing both, like writing a new joke and then trying it on stage, and if it works, it's one of the best feelings.
Yeah.
You can have. Sometimes if you've not written anything new in a while and you're going through the motions and you're a bit like, oh, I need to do another gig and I'm sick of this material, can get a bit annoying. But if you're doing both, then I think it's definitely the best.
Aye. Somebody said, like, I hate writing, I love having written.
Yeah.
That's very true. It's like there's a lot of things that keep you away from the pen and paper, but once you sit down and do it, it's so much fun. It's great fun to write jokes. It's brilliant. Like, it's the sort of thing that when you're doing another job or you're uni or something like that, that's, you know, you go, oh, like, if you think of a joke, that's the thing, but then when it becomes the job, all of a sudden it's like, oh, you feel all this sort of resistance towards doing it.
Yeah.
And you used to be more like, you would prefer writing more, and now you're more you like performing it.
I've always enjoyed performing, but like, I think
or you saw yourself as a writer?
I saw myself as a writer, but I've had so much performing experience and have experience now, and I've been so lazy as a writer that my performance has got up. But I'm trying to get into the writing again. But it's the funny thing is, a lot of people sometimes don't realise that it is, you're two things. You're a writer and a performer, and you can gig a lot. But if you're not writing, it's a problem. In the same way, you can sometimes write too much and then you're not trying it out enough. And so it's a yin and a yang very much for stand-up, of those two things.
And then I guess also you've got the trying to improvise maybe with things that the audience have said to you, whether it's heckles or like questions that you've just asked them. Do you find that, is that a skill that you've had to develop over a long time, or does
Definitely
it
is, yeah. Like, in terms of doing crowd work, it's something that you can only get better at by doing it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you see a comedian and they've got stock, like, ad-libs. So it's like they're pretending that this is off the cuff, and then you've seen them doing that 50 times, you know, it's just pretty fake. But definitely it's a skill to have, to improvise and being able to just riff off of people's whatever they've said and genuinely go in a direction that you wouldn't have expected it to go in.
Yeah,
totally. As Steve says, it's something that you only really learn from doing it. And then, like, I've in the last year or so, I've done a lot of hosting and stuff as well, where basically you're essentially all you're really doing is talking to the crowd and try to generate laughs that way, in a way. So that's been interesting, because then it adds another string to your bow. When you're doing a set and something does interrupt, you're a bit quicker off the mark in terms of just reacting to it and all that, and you feel a wee bit less pressure because it's a slightly different skill. But then it's just it's a slightly different skill to learn. But again, that's, you pick up from performing, and the more you do it, the better you get. Yeah.
What do you think the hardest spot is to do? Like, do you prefer to follow people who've done really, really well, or is it easier to kind of pick up when someone's died on stage?
It depends, because like being an opener is really tough because the crowd might not be warmed up yet. But
Steve getting his excuses in because he's opening tonight.
I'm opening tonight, so I'm doing one of the tough spots, I think. No, but then
one day you'll make this main support slot, don't worry.
But on the other hand, like, if you're closing and people are drunk and people have been sitting there for 2 hours and they're getting sick of it, it's tough doing that.
Yeah, well here we only really would close here at like the Red Roll at the New Act night, but that's where we sort of experience that because like especially because it's like a lot, usually 9 or 10 acts on Red Raw, so like by the time that you're the headliner, sometimes can be a bit of a tough shift because maybe people have left, people have, you know, they're a bit bored, they're a bit disappointed Frankie Boyle's not turned up, whatever. So like, there's that thing of like, it's at the end of the long night, and that's on a fucking Tuesday, so God knows what it must be in like a Saturday night.
Yeah.
People, their whole week is went to looking forward to this night out on Saturday for going to a comedy club, and then you're on last, and
there's
like,
pressure to be better than everyone else as well, I guess.
Exactly.
Like, but that's why there's, you know, you need to pay your dues, and it takes a long time to get there in terms of the headlining gigs because you need to be better than everyone.
They say that the sweet spot, like the best
spot,
one, is the middle spot. So like. Usually the 10-minute spot on tonight, it's usually the 10-minute spot in the middle section.
But even the main support after that, like the middle section is generally the best time to go in.
Yeah, because people are warmed up, people aren't tired yet, and they know what's happening, they know what to expect.
It's like that Goldilocks thing, isn't it? It's like, you know, not too cold, not too hot, just right sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the sweet 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Did you find it really difficult to work up from? Because obviously it doesn't seem like that much until I suppose you have to perform it, but 5 extra minutes of material when you're a new stand-up is probably quite a lot to try and build up to. So how did you try and develop your 10 into 15 or 15 into 20?
I think the toughest jump is the 10 into 15 because it's like you've had this 10 minutes that is going well in clubs and you're happy with that, and it's not just a case of going, right, I'll just put another 5 minutes on the end of it. It's completely different. It's quite a big... I think that's probably the biggest jump. I don't know what you think.
I think, because everyone always says when you start out, oh, like, really just hone this 5 minutes and all that sort of stuff. But I always changed quite a lot at the start because I wanted to talk about different things. And also, because I didn't really have any performance experience, I didn't want to only be able to go on stage if I was, you know, saying these exact words. So I was always kind of trying to change and talk about different topics. So by the time I think I came to doing longer sets than like 5, I think I sort of had other stuff. It might not even have been the strongest stuff to say, but at least had other material that I could bring in.
Yeah.
But it can be tough, yeah. Like I think every step up is like that, but I suppose it's just about. And the good thing is that there is a sort of hierarchy. So like if you do your 5 minutes at start, but then once you get a bit more established, I suppose you maybe get 10 minutes on like some midweek new material gig or a gig where there's like 5 people in the audience or whatever, and all of that sort of stuff adds up to just helping you develop, so that by the time you get to a gig where there's a bit more riding on it, you've had that experience,
Yeah. Are there any other areas that you'd like to maybe develop into, like any more controversial topics that you've been working on talking about, or new styles, like more surreal elements of comedy?
It's always interesting to sort of delve into other things. I would like to do more character-based things, maybe not in a stand-up thing, but like we've got a sketch group as well, and it's always interesting doing character-based stuff because you're not being yourself and you can go into different avenues that you wouldn't go before. Recently you've been wanting to talk about relationships more and stuff.
Well, I talk a lot about relationships. I also do have a lot of politics stuff that I want to get into at some point as well, but relationships for me is probably, it's sort of the thing that I'm most interested just off stage talking about in general. So like I want to sort of bring that to the stage, but it's quite difficult because sometimes it's like as I say, sometimes it's the most revealing stuff that it's the funniest, but then there's like that thing of if it doesn't get a laugh, it's just like you've really just said something quite weird and embarrassing for no reason.
I guess you have to read the exact right audience, to do it with the first time.
And you really need to be willing and have a space to fail. That's a big part of success in stand-up, and really anything, is you need to be willing to fail over and over again a lot. And that's really the main thing that I think keeps people that don't do stand-up away from the people who do. The difference is we are willing to fail in order to succeed, because
resilience, just being resilient to doing shite gigs and dying and just keep going back and keep doing it.
There's so many people that don't even ever try because they're petrified of that thing. If it doesn't go well, then their whole identity is based on being a funny person, when really it's just a skill that you can learn like anything else. But you need to you know, it's not always going to work. It's a lot of trial and error stand up, so you need to be willing to go up there and for it to be awkward and feel horrible, because you can learn from that, you know, and then get better, slightly better the next time, hopefully.
Do you have any tips for if anyone did want to try stand up? What do you do when a joke really falls flat and you can't save it?
Just power on, like double down and just keep not double down on the joke.
No.
Like if it
No,
dies,
bitches are crazy.
if something dies like that and it's horrendous and people are like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen, move on to the next thing. But like a lot of people, like, it's weird when you start out, sometimes you don't realise how bad you're doing, and then like when you're established, you don't realise how probably good you're doing compared to other people.
Yeah.
It's like a different mindset.
Yeah.
So
your awareness shifts.
Yeah.
You sort of don't know what you don't know when you start out, and that helps you, because if you did know how bad you were, you would stop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, because I always remember my first 5 minutes being pretty good, but looking back on...
Oh, if you've seen your first gig now, you'd think it was awful.
Why am I still doing this?
Yeah, but, you know...
But
you
advice for people to start, I would say, just if you've started, just keep doing it. Like, there's that resilience thing, and just keep going. Don't post on the Scottish Comedy Forum on Facebook, because... Yeah, a lot of people have been ostracised for like posting mental stuff. You get crazy people that try and do stand up. As you were saying, it's like a certain type of psychopath that wants to do it.
This is actually why we are being interviewed right now. Only advice I ever really give anyone is like, just keep writing, keep gigging, and then just analyse it in between. So like, I record all my gigs. I'll probably video it tonight as well, but I'll at least do the audio, and then it's like forensics, and it's like you know how when planes crash they've got the black box, so they listen back and they make sure the mistake doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
You can do that with stand up.
Yeah.
Just record it in your voice memos in your phone, or film it, and even if you had a bad gig or a good gig, you can watch it back and go, right, okay, what things don't we do, or what do we do the next time?
Yeah.
So if you do all of that, I don't really think there's any way that you can't get better.
Stephen did a really fantastic first set and was then followed by Rachel Jackson, who's an actress as well as a comedian. She lives all the way in Ayrshire but had come to Glasgow to do the gig, so she didn't have much time to talk to me after her set, but we managed to get a few minutes in to chat. So do you mind introducing yourself?
I'm Rachel Jackson.
And what kind of style of comedy do you do?
Well, I'm an actress and a comedian, and I kind of got into stand-up through like acting and just kind of doing funny monologues and stuff, and then that developed into like breaking the fourth wall and chatting to the audience. And so it's like I'm like an accidental stand-up. Like I didn't ever mean to do this.
Yeah.
And then I was getting laughs, and I decided actually I love this.
Yeah.
So so that's kind of. But in terms of my comedy, I think it's like a bit weird but like relatable.
Mm-hmm.
So people are like, that's crazy, but yeah, I kind of had that as well, or something similar. So that's what I hope to do with my comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you ever draw from other people's experiences that you hear about as well, or do you try to keep it based on your own?
No, it's like most of myself, but obviously I'm always willing to, like, you know, comedians are always helping you with punchlines and stuff, because there's a bit at the moment that I don't really have a punchline for, and bless, all the comedians are like, oh, you can, you know, and they try and sort of help you out, and so it's a really nice community in that way. But yeah, it's mostly just like stories about like how crazy my life's been.
Yeah. And do you find it really, really different preparing for a performance on stage than you would for your acting performances?
Yeah, it's crazy because you're sort of being yourself, and obviously with acting you're playing a character, so you're kind of getting to hide a bit more because you're not you. And so stand-up is like, it's like being naked basically. And then, sorry, that probably sounds really wanky.
No, not at all.
But yeah, it's like stripped, and you're just you. So if people don't laugh and they don't like you, it's like, whoa, that hurts because I'm being me. So it is just a different art form, but I love them both so much. And I love different things about them both, but aye.
Do you get more nervous for one than the other?
That's such a good question. God, probably stand-up actually, yeah. Because like I say, it's like, obviously if you're in a play or something, you're all in a cast and you're all in it together, but with stand-up it's just you going out there. So if it goes well, it's all on you, and if it goes badly, it's all on you. So it's kind of that, you know, it feels like more pressure. Whereas when you're an actor, you're part of a company, and so yeah, I think I do get more nervous about stand-up, and also because it's just that thing of like, it feels personal if people don't laugh, because you're like, oh my god, you don't like me. And that's like, we all just want to be liked and loved. That's like a human nature.
Yeah.
So yeah.
After another brilliant set by Rachel, it was time for Marc Jennings, who I had talked to earlier. Here's a little clip of him doing his thing on stage.
Guys, we are going to get Marc Jennings on. He is my favourite comic here tonight. You're going to love him as well. Let me hear you start clapping and cheering. Let me hear you. Go
How are you doing? You alright, Glasgow? Yeah! It's lovely to be here. It's nice to be back. Nice to be back in Glasgow for me, right? Because, like, see, last weekend I was gigging to, like, mainly English audiences because I was in Edinburgh, right? And it's just nice to be back here because, like, I'm just come out and speak to all you the way I would normally speak. Do you know what I mean? Like, say the things I'd normally say. Things like, hing. Instead of thing or hink. Instead of think, because that's like how we actually speak to each other in Glasgow, innit? Like, me and my mate were watching that David Attenborough thing that came out the other day, was it Our Planet or whatever, right? We were watching that as the credits were rolling at the end of the episode. My mate just turned to me and he went, "Aye, it really makes you think." And I was like, "What about?" And he says, "I don't know. It makes you think about things." So clearly one of those things is not pronunciation, mate. But you know, in Glasgow we all say things like hang, we even hinking, wouldn't they? I mean,
Marc's set was really brilliant as well, and as an English person, I really liked his material about Scottish pronunciations of words. Finally, it was time for the headlining act, Keith Farnan. He also had some amazing material about some quite serious topics I would have thought had been difficult to cover, but he had everyone laughing. Here's some audio of me interviewing him after his set. So, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. The Irish voice you'll hear in the next while is Keith Farnan. It's not a very Irish name. The Irish version is Kenneth O'Farnan, Farraa Fada N-I Fada I-N. So nobody would ever spell that right in England. So Keith Farnan. It is. Keith is not my favourite name, but my middle name is Patrick, so it's Keith Patrick Farnan, but then my father and my brother are both called Patrick, so if you look at Patrick Farnan, you'll get Captain Pat Farnan, and you'll get an engineer called Patrick Farnan. So Keith Farnan, the comedian. There's only one of me in the world. I've checked, that's it.
Or they just haven't found the internet yet.
Well, yeah, hopefully. There was a Keith Farnan who's a footballer in Sligo, but you know he's not very good, so we don't like to associate with him.
Could you briefly summarise your style of comedy?
That's a nightmare. Jesus. Briefly summarise. I was a solicitor before I was a comedian. I worked as a student in the Innocence Project in New York and against death penalty cases in Atlanta in Georgia. And my very first hour Edinburgh show was basically a 45-minute lecture that I converted into comedy, sort of, which traced me going from Cork, knowing nothing really about the death penalty, and working in Atlanta with an incredible lawyer called Mike Mears, who, you know, sort of used, and basically because they had no money, no funding in America, there's no public defense system, so they really needed to use us. And I think that sort of inequity has always informed what I talk about. I mean, they talk about in comedy that you need to pick your targets, that you should be always punching up and not punching down. And I think that's been a big part of what I do. So the first show was called Cruel and Unusual, about the death penalty. I've talked about racism in my second show called No Blacks, No Jews, No Dogs, No Irish. Third show was about women's rights. It was How Much Is That Woman in the Window? Then I did shows on privacy, the collapse of the Irish economy, and it's generally about, I suppose, the world falling apart. That's one side of me. That's when I get to do my own hour. The weird thing is then when I go to a club situation, I can pretty much, because I'm Irish, we end up conversations like a blood sport in Ireland, if you can imagine. If you're telling a story, there's two other people next to you. You're the hare, they're the greyhounds. And if you drop the story, they will take you down. And you just get into this pattern, you get into this thing where you almost invite discourse, you invite interruption, you try to get into the crowd and talk to them and see what they'll give you. And from that then I ended up getting a TV break, because I was seen in the Comedy Store riffing on this stuff, and I did the McIntyre Roadshow years ago on the BBC, and that kind of broke me in England. And so I had this sort of duality where I was doing just having fun in clubs and then trying to cover very serious stuff in, they're not serious stuff, I mean just stuff that interested me in hour-long shows. So I mean, it's political, but it's not left or right. It's more about inequality, and it sort of tries to not, the left aren't the good guys, the right aren't the bad guys, extreme of anything, and in a way it helps me to muddle through. I mean, it helps me to muddle through what's going on in the world, and I think a lot of comedians are doing that, using comedy to try and, take the experience of the masses and turn it into one narrative that maybe we can all understand and get behind.
Was that the first time then in that lecture style thing which turned into a comedy show that you had tried comedy, or did people before tell you you were funny and you had considered it?
People don't believe I do this. I was the guy in school. There'd always be a group of people, and they would tell, the first guy would tell the joke, get a laugh. Second guy, add something on. Third guy, something more. Fourth guy, it's petering out. I was always the fifth guy, and I would say something, and I would kill the joke, the mood, the atmosphere. I would kill everything. I had no timing, I had no confidence, I had no ability to speak in public, I couldn't riff, I couldn't improvise. And then, because I lived in an awful shitty town where anything different was just crushed, and then I went to college where I got to do theatre, writing, drama producing while doing law, and then I got to set up a theatre company, do some improvising, and I suppose that all led, basically comedy allows you to be a writer, director, producer and actor all at the same time. So if you're interested in theatre but you're not good enough at any one of those things, you get to do all of them, which is great. And it's one of the great sort of arguments between actors and comedians, because actors have great reverence for comedy and comedians love actors, and they think that actors go much deeper than we do. So yeah, so I had, the hour came very early on. I've never done anything the easy way. I've always sort of just barreled forward. I left law to become a comedian without having a plan or an agent or a producer or anything like that. And in a way it was the making of me. In the way I could have done things a lot neater and planned it, but maybe I never would have become a comedian. And so the first time I remember seeing Dylan Morton in Dublin and just thinking to myself, like I've seen so much comedy over the years with my dad and listened to a lot of comedy. And then I remember thinking, well, maybe I could try this, because it was like seeing The Matrix. I suddenly thought I saw a pattern in the stories he was telling. I could understand the setup and the sort of the callbacks and how he was putting stories together. So I tried it, and I did my first gig in Dublin in a tiny little room, and it went really well. And then my second gig went terribly, and that was probably the most important thing, because it went so badly. I was like, I think if my second gig had gone well, I might have just gone, I know how to do this, that's fine. But because it went so badly and I was so humiliated, it made me go back and try again and again and again to make it better.
Do you have a favourite aspect of any of the writing, producing or improvising with the audience and trying to get their stories?
I love... I love when the wheels come off a gig, when you have a plan and it's thrown out the window in a good way, not by somebody heckling or being drunk or on cocaine or whatever, but just genuinely something happens and it takes you in a different direction, and everyone has to be human for a moment and listen to each other, and as a comedian it's and it's something that you relate to with actors, is when you're on stage you need to listen incredibly carefully to things that are being said to you, and I think that's, writing is torturous and horrible and comes up with great things, but writing is all about death and re-editing and dying and dying and dying and trying again, whereas when you're in the moment, like last year I was in Hong Kong doing a show, and I was doing like an hour and a half show. And towards the end I had this sort of gimmick in the middle where I sent out slips of paper to people, and I said, what's the hardest thing you've done? And one of them was, and it was anonymous, so people could feel, it was trying to get a way to get people to open up, like what people were angry about, what they were happy about, without feeling under pressure. Because if a comedian says to you anything, you're immediately worried he's going to humiliate me. And I try to take that out of the equation. And this one slip of paper said, the hardest thing I did was climb Mount Everest, and it was written in such a way. I actually said I'd really, if the person here is willing to talk about it, I'd really, because I want to know if this is genuine. It's quite amazing. And there was a guy who was at the back, very sort of sly, quiet man, and yeah, he was like, I did climb Mount Everest. I said, that's incredible. And he said, but that wasn't the hardest part of it. And I said, what was that? What's harder than climbing Mount Everest? And we're all having a bit of a laugh. And then we come back to him, and he says the hardest part was that halfway up, I had to climb past my friend who froze to death there last year, and he was still in the ice and he was still there, and I had to go past him and just keep going. And you could see, and it was interesting because the crowd reacted in such a way, shock and horror, obviously, at the story, and empathy, and they looked at me as if to say, well, you know, the gig's over, this is done, this is terrible, oh, you know, you can't get out of this. And I was like, well, no, it's not about getting out of this, it's about, well, let's talk about it, let's talk about your friend and talk about what happened if you want to talk about it. And he did, and it really, you know, it was a real moment, and that's an amazing thing to get on stage where you can find something like that, and you know, and it wasn't like there was any hilarious put down or comeback, but we just managed to craft something out of the rest, you know, where we talked about death, and we talked about how, you know, it's not a surprise, you know, I mean, look, he died doing what he loved, the rest of us are, you know, going to die in whatever circumstances, and then I was able to go off and riff on the way that everyone else in the audience would die, and that sort of took a little bit of the heat out of it. But I think, yeah, when something takes the gig in a direction that you don't expect it, it's probably the most fun you'll ever have on stage. Ever.
When you're with the audience in a room, other than just their laughter, are there other cues that you take on? Can you tell from like the way people are looking at each other in the audience, how they've reacted to your joke, or the way they're sitting, or anything like that? Heckles?
Oh, you know, I mean, in the beginning, heckles always throw you because your mind is racing, whereas now you're practically zen on stage. You are completely still. Something comes at you, it's almost fun. Like, and usually they're beginner hecklers. Like, you know, it's probably the first time they've ever heckled anyone. It's very sweet, and you sort of, you know, and I sort of try to use it in almost a Tai Chi manner. I take the energy of it and I'll bring it back to them and say, well, what were you trying to say there? You called me a twat. That was the one word that came out of your mouth. But what did you really mean? What did you want to say to me? You know, what about me made you think twat? Or were you just panicked and I confronted, and what's going on with your life? And I start asking them questions that really fuck them up. In terms of like tonight there was a comedian on earlier on, and she told this great story of being at the BAFTAs but having to get a megabus there because her life is a dichotomy of sort of status and no money, and she had this really weird encounter with a guy who sat next to her on the megabus, and she was trying to hide from him, and at the end of the encounter he said her name, he said Rachel, and she ran away from him. And so I opened my set by saying last year I was coming up to Glasgow and I got on the megabus, and without even continuing, half the crowd were like laughing, going, they got the call back to 3 comedians ago, and I was like, yes, that is a beautiful thing, because you've listened to all the comedians, you've heard what they've said, I can now do whatever I want here, and we can have fun, I can do wordplay, I can bring in stories, I can talk about race and religion and you know, whatever, blasphemy, whatever I want, because you're an intelligent audience, you're a quick audience, and then there's other audiences, and you try something and it doesn't work, and it just, you know, the bar gets set very quickly in terms of how they react to a joke. Yeah. More so than body language. I mean, I've had people sit and stare at me in such anger, almost. I'm like, God, they're really hating the show, and what I discovered was that standing by the door and saying goodbye to everyone, thanking them, you meet these people and they come and say, thank you so much, that was really great, I really enjoyed it, I was just having a terrible day, but that really took me out of my... And for them, they're not laughing necessarily, but it's distracting them or it's taking them, and in your head on stage, you've damned them, you've said, oh, you don't understand my comedy, you're an idiot. But then you talk to them and you realise, actually, no, they're going through something themselves, and everyone in front of you is not just there to serve your narcissistic ego with your laughter, but they have a life that's going on that's in all sorts of shit. I mean, I've done a gig where a funeral party walked in, and they just come from a funeral, and they're all in the suits and the things, and they just needed a laugh, and it was you know, I mean, there's a lot of death in Ireland. Like, we love talking about death, we're brought up with death, it's you know, we're very comfortable with death from a young age, so that sort of comes into sort of I think comedy quite a lot with Irish acts.
So do you think there's a particular a very strong Irish sense of humour then compared to, say, Scottish or English, different types?
That's, I mean, to be honest with you, at this stage, comedy, like everything else in culture, is splitting. The community experience is being divided. If the moon landing was to happen now, it might happen on Netflix or Amazon. Not everybody would experience it. Like it's you ask, broadcasters are terrified at the moment because they're losing hundreds of thousands of viewers every year, because people who've grown up now have grown up with iPads, YouTube. They've got their own channels that they love. Like they'll say to you, I love this person who's got 25 million viewers and they're in America and that's who I watch. And those people are millionaires, but we've never heard of them because they're not in the broadcaster. And in terms of humor, the same thing is happening. Like people can find the most niche, and the people will go through different layers of, they go for the broader comedy and then they'll go into the next, like comedians do. Like we start off as comedians, we're like, wow, I've just told a joke about how the Irish are very charming, I'm brilliant. And then you get into go, wow, people have been doing that for 50 years. And then you find the next level and the next level. And I think it's not really about nationality anymore. I think it's more about experience, about personal connection, about people telling their stories, about, you've got a lot of, one of the best shows I ever saw in Edinburgh was a comedian called Bethany Black, and she was transgender, and this is going back 7 or 8 years now, at least, actually, more. So she was the first ever transgender comedian, that I know of. I mean, there might be someone else before that, and her story was about that, and it was incredible. And it's that sort of diversity now that's happening, which means that I think, nationality has less to do with it. And, sense of humour, the Irish and the Scottish probably have more in common with each other. England is very divided within itself. I mean, it's not just Brexit. I mean, it goes right down to, or maybe Brexit was a good example of sort of how divided it can be, but you have London versus, which is a hodgepodge of everyone, versus the North, versus the Midlands, versus Cornwall, Brighton. You have what's regarded as sophisticated versus what's seen as basic, whereas, and again, the problem is nobody's listening to each other, they're just labelling each other. So England's a tricky one to sort of nail down. I mean, I think Scotland and Ireland are pretty close to each other in terms of sense of humour, storytelling style, attitudes towards mortality, death, life, religion, tensions, things like that. Whereas England is a much looser beast, and again, you can see that reflected in the amount of comedians that come out of England that are so different and so don't make any sense in many ways to some of the Irish. I mean, there's a lot of great sort of comedians who have writers. They have writing groups. They have 10, 15 writers writing for them. Irish comedians don't have that. Like, the joy is in discovering the story and telling it, and it's what we grew up with. And it goes back to growing up with conversations where you're trying to be funnier than the other guy and you're failing, but you get better and better. And to have someone else write that story for you, it just feels empty.
So do you try and, before you go somewhere, do you go and treat everywhere the same, depending on, or not necessarily place-wise, but even venue-size? Do you find that makes a big difference to the way you perform? Or if you know that the audience is going to be a certain age group, for example? Or...
Yeah, you get into trouble assuming anything about an audience. If you prejudge them, you can put yourself in a hole. If you go to a certain room and say, oh, this is going to be terrible, it probably will be terrible because you've said it's going to be terrible, whereas in fact it might have been nice had you not judged them. So you try not to prejudge. I mean, that said, in terms of size, I think my comfort zone is about 1,000 people max. I think I've done gigs with 3,000. I don't enjoy it. There's a screen. I don't feel I'm connecting with people. I'm communicating through it. I might as well be on an iPad. It feels very odd. But 1,000 people is great. And then a place like the Stand where you get to just in the middle of them. You can see every eyeball. You can see every reaction. You can look at every face and go, there's more there than and sometimes I genuinely just walk into the middle of a crowd and just start, it's almost like gather round, we'll tell stories. And the sort of ethereal nature of that is, I think, what surprises people sometimes with stand-up gigs is they're like, wow, this isn't like TV or pre-recorded. It just, this happened. I did a 20-minute set in Newcastle recently about a guy in the front row who was called, I think his name was Bilal, and it meant moist in Arabic, and it just was fucking amazing. Because we had French people describing, and it was trying to get to the root again from a psychologist's point of view. Why did your parents call you moist? Like how, and what would moist be in other languages, and just really, and he'd never really thought about it. He was bismet, I think it was bismet, it means is moist in Arabic. And it's just those sort of moments you live for, because they are, and you prepare for them in a way that nobody else can ever, and when they come, you fucking nail them. You nail them. You relax, you breathe, you go, this is going to be great. Let's just enjoy this and let's just go. So the more, you try not to prejudge, you try to be relaxed, you try to be open, you try to listen. And I think that's where you get the best out of the audience and they get the best out of you.
Brilliant, give them a cheer! Guys, thank you so much for coming in tonight. Please do keep coming back to see live stand up. Please give it up for all the extra saw tonight. Check the Stand Comedy's website for some of the favourites that will be coming up for you. Guys, get home safe tonight. You've been great.
This podcast was created by Amelia Hilton for the Glasgow University Psychology Society, with interviews and content from Scott at the Stand, Bruce Morton, Janey Godley, Stephen Buchanan, Rachel Jackson, Marc Jennings, and Keith Farnan. It was recorded at the Stand, Glasgow on the 25th of April 2019. It was produced by Amelia Hilton and edited by Amelia Hilton and Jack Harding. Psych Soc O'clock does not own any of the music used in the episode. A huge thanks to The Stand and all of the performers and staff that helped make this episode happen. Check out the description to see where you can find them performing next.